Wilhelt the Rock Cleaver versus Helga, Roshin, and Shelob. Haven't seen Shelob in a while. I was half tempted to play that again recently. I don't know if I'll have time before new sets release now. A one-lander in classic Magic Online fashion. It's a shame that. If we get into a land, then it won't necessarily be the worst, but we'll have to keep our rocks as well, so... mulligan. Okay, into a three-lander. We don't have any blue mana though. We could potentially play the long game with this if we get to play Raise the Palisade, but we're up against green players who are going to ramp ahead of us, so I think we need to go down a card, unfortunately. And of course, into another one-lander. We're going down 2 cards, apparently. Okay, that's about as good as we're going to do, I think, so get rid of an Offer You Can't Refuse. And the Arcane Denial. Suppose I could keep the Arcane Denial, because then we can draw some cards instead, so get rid of Noxious Ghoul. And we'll see how we do, starting with 5 cards in hand. We draw on our first turn at least into another land. So start off with the tap land first. And there's another land on top I think we have to keep. Might be that we have to Demonic Tutor for Necropotence or something, a means of refilling our hand. So maybe that's our turn 3 play, Demonic Tutor, turn 2, Necropotence, turn 3. Farseek from Helga. Might have Bant Mana available next turn, started off with a Reliquary Tower. So we know the land we're getting into, we'll fix our colours, and we'll attempt to curve out, so Demonic Tutor on turn 2. Oh, I could have sworn we had Necropotence in this list. Alright, well, we're going to have to go for something else then, apparently. Shall we just make it a much slower Black Market Connections instead then? Connections doesn't tend to get removal pointed at it at least, but the difference being that even if someone does point removal at Necropotence, you can still refill your hand with it on the way out. Roshin throws out a Sol Ring. Still hasn't fixed his colours over here, but an Arcane Signet could help with that. Play Temple of the False Gods as his land for the turn, so we'll not be able to tap that down for mana until he gets into another land. Sword of the Animist doesn't have any creatures to equip it to yet, but it's a bit of a slower paced game at least, so I could have kept that original hand that had a bunch of lands in it. But that's hindsight for you. Speaking of which, we draw back into Necro Duality. So let's play ourselves a Black Market Connections here. Hopefully Shelob hasn't been holding up enchantment removal. Helga not coming down straight away as well gives us chance to get rid of it with a Fleshbag Marauder. So maybe we can go for our commander next turn. Ready for Fleshbag Marauder to edict a few things away. Demonic Tutor here as well. The first commander to hit play is Roshin Meanderer. If we see a couple of commanders on this turn cycle, I might be tempted to just forego everything else and play Fleshbag Marauder. Helga, Skittish Seer. So what we could do is bolt this down and hold up an Arcane Denial just in case the blue player decides to counter our Marauder. He does still have blue mana held up at the moment. Might equip the Sword of the Animist to it. He's got Temple of the False God mana held up now as well. Was going to pay for it with Arcane Signet, then untapped, which might suggest he doesn't have any reason to hold up that coloured mana, or it might have just been a misclick. I think we're best taking the 3 life. I think we're probably best just bolting down the Agadeem's Awakening, even though we're about to take a bunch of life to the Black Market Connections. Alright, an Arcane Signet of our own as well. Take all of these. Early on in the game I usually take enough life to make a creature. Won't make creatures that often with Black Market Connections though, because it's a lot of life to take. So we drew into Feed the Swarm as well. Bolt down the Agadeem's Awakening, so we're down to 30 already. But let's go Fleshbag Marauder, and if we don't have to counter it, we can play the Arcane Signet. Alright, that came down alright, so we can sacrifice that. Ready to recast later, we get rid of the commanders, and hopefully none of them scoop to that. The Helga player has plenty of mana. Could have held up the Arcane Denial as well and tried to hold on to a treasure, but this gives us more mana next turn, more consistent mana. Urborg means we don't mind drawing into Cabal Coffers now. Might have been what Shelob tutored for, seeing as how he wasn't doing so well on black mana. Rasta cares about instants and sorceries, so has definitely gone Spider Tribal here. Roshin Meanderer being replayed again, so we've wasted one of our opponent's turns here, that's good. And the same again for Helga. Fleshbag Marauder doing exactly what we wanted it to do. The board near enough exactly the same as it was before. A Kindred Discovery. Let's not make any more creatures. We'll draw and make a treasure. I think we might have to just go for our commander. Depends if we get into any actual zombies. just a Liliana, untouched by death. That will be part of a combo. We'll be able to cast zombies from our graveyard for a turn if we -3 on this, and then with the enchantment that makes our zombies cost 0, we'll be able to do all kinds of crazy combos with that if we want to. Yeah, so we've got no zombies available to us in the zombie tribal deck. We can't very well... yeah, we can't swing in with this if we get down Kindred Discovery to draw a card, so I think it's just Wilhelt, and we'll hold up the Arcane Denial. Game's going okay, considering that we had to mulligan down a few times. Not going to bother sacrificing to Wilhelt. We'll get a couple of draws next turn for a land, hopefully. Although missing a land there didn't feel good. Potentially have Arcane Denial to draw a card as well. Seems as though Shelob might be missing a land as well. Tempting Discovery. Do we have to go Cabal Coffers here? I mean, this is going to... you always say no to this. It's always going to benefit Shelob more than you. Grabbed himself the Shire first. Alright, Helga did say yes as well, so Shelob going to ramp ahead very well here. Simic Growth Chamber. A basic here, unbelievably, and then a Cabal Coffers for us. There was a Bajuka Bog, going to get rid of our graveyard, you have to assume. Yeah, pointed at us. Don't think we're going to do too much with Fleshbag Marauder. It could have come in useful, but that's not losing out on any combo pieces, really. So that's fine. Better to see it sooner than later. Also grabbed himself a Cabal Coffers and a Cabal Stronghold, only cares about basics. He doesn't have any basic swamps in play at the moment, apart from the snow-covered forests, which are swamps now. So can now tap Cabal Coffers for 8 mana. Doesn't have any green available for his commander. Plays a Mirkwood Bats. So is he planning on making a bunch of tokens? He'll make the odd one to Arasta, but don't think that's worth countering in all honesty. We've got a lot of mana for Roshin next turn. Thornbite Staff I don't like with Death Touchers, so we'll Arcane Denial that. I would hope that I could rely on my opponents in their colours to get rid of an artifact, but we can't make them use it, and there's no guarantee that they've got that removal either. So to save us losing all our creatures, blow up Thornbite Staff. They do get a Spider token for their efforts. They'll draw 2 cards with Arcane Denial. We will draw 1. And we each lose a life because of the token that was made. Didn't have to use our treasure either because we got another land, so could tap that for black to the Urborg. We draw into a Cursed Marauder, which is arguably better than the Fleshbag. Gargo, speaking of fight creatures, I'm assuming that Shelob is going to want to fight things and ping with these types of effects. Not seen Roshin tapped down yet, might have an instant speed X spell. Could still go Chord of Calling for 4 at the moment. Decides to pass the turn, whatever it is that he's holding up. And now Helga dropping Mangara. Gonna start drawing cards with that. Puts the first plus counter on Helga. Gains a life and draws a card. So it might be worth a Kindred Discovery into the Accursed Marauder next turn, so that we can get rid of a few big creatures. The Edicts are coming into play very nicely this game. Helga swings into the left and triggers the Sword of the Animist for landfall. Blocks with the Arasta, that's a 3-5 versus a 3-5. So you would think he would have attacked us if he was going to just throw away his attack phase like that, but fine, I'm glad he didn't. We're down to 26 already. That is a Mind Stone, see if we can get into a land here. Getting into these treasure might actually have been of some relevance over the Necropotence this game if we weren't going to draw into lands. Alright, well there's a Phyrexian Altar. Don't think we can do anything with a Phyrexian Altar at the moment. Yeah, I don't think we can do anything with that, so go with the original plan. We'll get down Necro Duality, and the Accursed Marauder, 2 of those should take out a decent chunk of creatures. Only making 5 mana to Cabal Coffers, but it accelerates us at least. Yeah, it's a real shame not getting into a land there, because it would have been nice to get down Kindred Discovery as well. Yeah, missing lands for so many turns doesn't feel good. Alright, Necro Duality first of all. Hopefully the mana will keep flowing and we'll be able to make use of the Kindred Discovery yet. Let's go Mind Stone as well. We're not going to be holding up any interaction, I don't think. Mangara will draw a card because that's the second spell we've cast. Might be that there are some instant speed creatures that can come down here into the Edict, but we'll force him to use them. So now I'll hold up the Mind Stone just in case we need to crack it. We'll go Accursed Marauder. Roshin is holding up priority. Decides to let it through. Seems as though there might be some kind of convoke coming from the Bant player actually. Alright, that's a clever concealment, so he's going to phase out there. Arasta will make the edict effect not quite as good now, because he can just sacrifice 2 spider tokens. Might still deal with Roshin at least, and we did get the clever concealment out of our opponent's hand. So a Cursed Marauder on the stack. Alright, and that has Roshin scoop, so it did one thing at least. Oh, actually, this is non-token. Ugh, didn't realise. So not as good as the Fleshbag Marauder apparently. There is a little clause there that is of some relevance. Won't even be able to sacrifice the Decayed Zombie either. Well, at least we got to get rid of a player, but we're going to have to recast our commander annoyingly. We'll swing straight to the right with a 3-2. 9 mana from our opponent's Cabal Coffers. The benefit at least is that our opponents can't sacrifice the tokens either, so he was just left with spider tokens over here, so I'll pretend I didn't overlook that. Plays Arasta again after grabbing it back with Balaged Recovery, and Shelob into play for the first time. So if the middle player was always going to scoop, I'm glad I countered that Thornbite Staff. A couple of 1-2s swinging towards us. We can't block with anything decent really. Yeah, we'll just take 2 damage. Jolriel, we see more tokens. And then Saruman the White is whenever you cast your second spell each turn, amass Orcs 2. So I'm not sure if there's any particular aim other than it's just a do the second thing in a turn and get tokens, or get just some kind of effect. We have multiple means of play 2 things in a turn matters permanents at the moment. So if our opponent swings in with, what is this now, a 4-6, I might have to block it, and yep. We've made an enemy out of our opponents due to the edict effects, I think. Sword of the Animist triggers. We've probably got a 2v1 on our hands now. Thankfully, if we're lucky, we can combo off out of nowhere, but I won't hold my breath. We do have to take a turn off recasting the commander thanks to my previous play. So let's see if we can finally draw into a land on turn 7. Fierce Guardianship is the first draw. Draw and make a treasure just in case we don't get into a land. Any lands that we get into accelerate us ahead even more. Well, Death Baron might be able to hold off our opponents at least, although we've only got 1 token to block with at the moment. Get a couple of Death Barons though. Yeah, not getting into the lands. I'm glad we grabbed that Cabal Coffers while we had the chance. That's 5 mana, plus 2 is 7, so we've got 12 in total here. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. This just paints an even bigger target on our backs, but we might be desperate for the mana. Or maybe we're best just being able to hardcast a Fierce Guardianship. Still not drawing into anything with Kindred Discovery, unfortunately. Do we even need our commander in play? Maybe not. We could just go Kindred Discovery here. We'll draw cards when the Death Baron enters. So when that does enter, we name Zombie. This cares about zombies entering and attacking. So if we can't block with the Decayed Zombie, we might as well attack him with it and draw a card. I'll give up on the Mind Stone being cracked, just so that we can hold up as much different mana as possible. Mangara will draw a card. And the good thing about having 2 Death Barons in play is that they will give each other Death Touch, as long as they both stay in play. Although the Bamp player is still looking in our direction, decides to let it through. So Necro Duality and the Kindred trigger. So we'll draw 2 cards and get 2 Death Barons. Alright, 3 Trees City might help us get back into it. And a Vengeful Dead is getting us ever closer to comboing off. I might just play Vengeful Dead so that we've got more bodies. If we play our commander, we'll have to sacrifice one of them to the legend rule. Vengeful Dead will give us more Death Touch bodies to block with. Hard call to make, really. We don't know what's in our opponent's hands. I think we just swing in here and we draw into another land. This one is a sack outlet, the Lazartep Quarry. So sacrifice the zombie at the end of combat. Obviously dealt the 4 damage there. It had Death Touch, so he didn't want to block. So we'll play Vengeful Dead just so that we've got another means of blocking our opponent's stuff. I'm hoping that Death Touch versus Death Touch will keep our opponents away. Might be that they've got direct bite and fight mechanics here, but if this buys us another turn it would be useful. Alright, now we're getting into the lands and getting to Overcharged Amalgam a bit too late. Maybe could have played the Wilhelt there so that we can hold up Fierce Guardianship, but I was trying to get as many bodies into play as possible, simply because of the Death Touch that we've got available, and hopefully we'll still have available. Anyway, a bunch of mana being made to Cabal Coffers again. There is Rishkar's Expertise is equal to Power. Yeah, so they've got an 8/8 Shelob. and blue mana being tapped down by the BAMP player, so making him use the counter magic. And that is Delvin's veto, nothing he can do about that except make a spider token in response. So I used up a lot of mana just to get countered there, and it might mean that Shelob wants to be reactionary and not focus in on us anymore, if he's worried about the BAMP player interfering with him. Some players like to take out revenge on opponents. A Sweet Gum Recluse is Flash and Cascade. When it enters, put 3+ counters on any creatures that entered this turn, so see if they get into another creature. They do have a spider token that has Summoning Sickness, and there is a Ruins Recluse. All the spiders going to have Death Touch, of course. Particularly good with something like Living Death or something like that if everything gets reanimated in one turn. But these spiders getting buffed immediately. No green mana left available, which does suggest that he doesn't have any bite cards in his hand. And I think if he's going to attack, he should be doing it to the right, really, because of our Death Touch. Plays a Felwar Stone with the floating mana, will give him the green he needs. Yep, does decide to go into the right, so an 8/8 Commander and a 3/5 Arasta. Mangara triggers for some more card draw. I'm just thinking now, one thing we could do, it's noteworthy that Wilhelt is a zombie itself. Easy to think that this is a human, but unusually for a tribal lord, this is a zombie as well, so we could keep the token copy of Wilhelt, then minus down on this and make use of some Phyrexian Altar mana and recast this a bunch of times from the bin in order to wipe out all the non-token stuff. And we'd make decayed zombies every time and not be forced to sacrifice our commander. We'd have Death Baron and the Vengeful Dead still in play because they're tokens as well, thanks to Necro Duality, so yeah, that is something we could try and aim for. Anyway, our opponent got down Rampaging Baloths. There we see Summer Bloom. You can play 3 additional lands this turn. And that makes a Spider token. The Saruman makes an Orc army as well. Plays a land into the Baloths, making a 4/4 token. I'm just hoping we don't see Overrun here, because I'll regret not going for Fierce Guardianship being held up to our commander otherwise. Makes another land for a 4/4. I think he's got 2 left. 6 cards in hand. The overrun on this is 6, and it will be base power 6/6 on everything, but he's got Death Touch to consider. And if we're going for that token play, then maybe we do just make some blocks. Decides not to attack. So again, in classic BAMP fashion, could be holding up interaction, but if we can at least get our commander into play, we can hold up the Fierce Guardianship for free. Okay, a Headless Rider. Black Market Connections can continue to draw and make a treasure. Just trying to get into a means of comboing on our opponents. Alright, just another land. So I think I'll drop the island so that we've got more blue mana. Don't think we need the sack outlet in Lazotep Quarry. So we've got 7 mana from Cabal Coffers. So we'll have 1 free after this. Yeah, it's difficult to work out how much mana we're going to have. And we don't know what our opponents are going to do either. Maybe I'll just try Headless Rider to get more tokens into play. We can kind of test our opponent on holding up priority as well. The BAMP player is holding up priority on us. So we get 2 of those, which means we get to draw more cards. And there is the Dreadhorde General. Let's drop Wilhelt. Mangara triggered again for another card draw, and that lands as well. So we choose which one to keep. Do we just keep the token copy? I think I'm going to. Our commander can go into the command zone. This will get triggers on the Headless Rider. Vengeful Dead will have our opponents lose a life a couple of times as well. And then Wilhelt does count itself when there's 2 of them in play. So we'll get a Decayed Zombie. And this is all just even more card draw as well. Death Baron might have turned this around for us and bought us the time we needed. Although with that being said, this doesn't count Fierce Guardianship, does it? There's lots of little intricacies that I'm not seeing here, because I've barely played this deck on Magic Online. Yeah, we don't control our commander, we've just got a token copy of it, so Fierce Guardianship isn't held up now. Noxious Ghoul would have been nice to have down before now. Shambling Ghast, I'm sure we could combo off with Phyrexian Altar. But yeah, I wanted to keep the token in play for the Accursed Marauder, which I thought we'd be making use of here, but now that we've actually drawn into a combo, they're sinking to stupor. I don't think we necessarily have the mana for all this though. Making a decent number of tokens with the 3-tree city might be of some use though, in order to hardcast any kind of counters that we might need. And there's a Murderous Rider as well. So let's get another zombie into play, I think, in the Shambling Ghast, just so that the 3-tree city we'll tap for more mana. I don't think our opponents are going to necessarily be expecting a combo with Shambling Ghast. Just looks like a weak little one-powered creature, so they let that in without really thinking about it. Phyrexian Altar he might think about for longer. So we continue to draw. There is a Midnight Reaper, speaking of draw. Alright, let's try and land Phyrexian Altar and see what happens. I'll tap for a bunch of black mana, and we've still got a couple of blue held up, which means we might only have the ability to counter one thing. We've got 13 mana though, which is exactly enough to tempt our opponents with Liliana. If they want to counter something, then we can go Lily again and Phyrexian Altar, but we won't have enough mana to hold up Fierce Guardianship. This is where the token mistake might be of some relevance. Maybe tempt them with countering a Noxious Ghoul instead. Priority held up again. Lets the Noxious Ghoul in. So we're going to get to disrupt the board either way here. When Noxious Ghoul enters, all non-zombies get -1/-1, and then we get a token copy of that to Necro Duality, so there's 3 triggers on the stack at the moment, plus we're drawing cards to all this. Now we get into a clump of lands. So it might be that he couldn't counter creatures. Is it here that we see some disruption? Okay, cycling a migration path, trying to get into an answer. That looks pretty good to me. Suggests he doesn't have anything. Joel Rael makes a wolf token, is it? No, a cat token. But that's going to go down here anyway. Alright, so debuff things quite nicely. Let's just pull the trigger and go for Phyrexian Altar here. We have to win during this phase because of the way I've had to use the mana. Alright, that comes down as well. So now it's Liliana, untouched by death, and we'll -3 on that straight away. We don't have to pass priority to our opponents once it's hit play, which is the benefit of Planeswalkers if you use them correctly. So -3, we can cast zombies from the graveyard this turn, and we've got 1 mana floating, which is for a counter spell. So let's float a black mana, sacrifice the Shambling Ghast, and we'll make a treasure token every time with it. And the more mana we make, the more we can hold up counter magic, but if they don't do anything straight away, I'm just going to assume that they don't have any means of interacting at all. And every time we do this, of course, Vengeful Dead is going to have our opponents lose 2 life. We'll make a bunch of tokens. In this instance, we're tempting our opponents, or did tempt our opponents, with counter magic on the Noxious Ghoul, but it entered, so that's going to end up wiping our opponent's creatures as well, which is kind of an accidental upside of this. So tokens enter. We've got tokens from Wilhelt when we sacrifice the Shambling Ghast as well. Now the problem being we could deck ourselves, but we can always sacrifice the cards that are making the tokens if we wanted to. And now it seems the Bant player is just going to rope out on us. So I'm assuming that we've got this one. We can indefinitely this turn, for the rest of this turn, play zombies from the bin. This pays for itself with the treasure token, but it pays for itself with Phyrexian Altar as well, so we've actually got infinite mana and infinite card draw, or until we deck ourselves anyway. Infinite death triggers, infinite ETBs, that is infinite bleed on the Vengeful Dead in that case. We can take care of our opponent's boards indefinitely with Noxious Ghoul, so a little bit of a clunky win. There were some odd mistakes here and there, like keeping the token version in play, but that tactic only really changed at the last second once I'd already made that decision, because I thought I was going to wipe the board with a Cursed Marauder a few times, but apparently we were able to just combo off instead. But yeah, for anyone who's unsure, all we're really doing is just playing this over and over again, sacrificing it and draining out our opponents with the 2 Vengeful Deads that we have in play. So apparently getting down Vengeful Dead instead of our commander was the right play. The Death Touch did manage to hold off our opponents. Eventually time's out. Seems as though the Spider player wants us to keep going, so we'll just get rid of his commander here. Replay Shambling Ghast. Draw a card. 2 Kindred Discovery twice due to having 2 copies of that. -2/-2 on everything with the 2 Noxious Ghouls. And it's rinse and repeat here pretty much. We've just drawn into an offer you can't refuse to further protect our combo. Our opponent's been a really good sport about it. He obviously knows that we've got the win here, so not going to make him sit through it. It would take forever and a day. But if you're worried about drawing your entire deck, which you obviously should be worried about doing, then you can sacrifice your Headless Riders and the like, and Wilhelt that forces you to make tokens, because you are also forced to draw cards into Kindred Discovery. Same with Liliana, Dreadhorde General. These types of permanents you can't easily sacrifice, so you do have to be careful. As good as they are, you have to be careful when you play them, because you will be forced to draw into those, but You can minimise that by, like I said, sacrificing the token generators. I've been kicked out into the lobby now, but we only had about 55 cards left in the deck, and our opponent was on like 35 life, something like that. So we could easily have decked ourselves before actually bleeding our opponent out. Something to definitely be wary of when you're going to combo off like this. But there's other bleed effects in the deck, so as you're making infinite mana, you can play those bleed effects out and kind of outrace your opponent. He'll lose his life before you lose all the cards in your deck. Anyway, that was a clunky one, as I said to my opponent. Kind of made some weird mistakes here and there, but managed to cobble one together in the end anyway. Hopefully you enjoyed this Wilhelt gameplay as much as you did in the last video. I'll be eager to get my hands on this deck as often as I can because it's one of my favourite commanders from recent years. Massive thank you to the patrons for their financial support of the channel. They are relentless in helping out with the channel financially, so hopefully you will consider doing so yourself via the link in the description below. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.